Today I'm going to be talking about biodiversity representation of the eastern seaboard. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is the variety of species and ecosystems within a given area. And this not only includes habitats and the number of species, but also includes the population genetics. But for the purposes of my talk, I'm going to be focusing specifically on the variety of species. Biodiversity has been declining from extinction rates across the world, and in order to preserve species biodiversity, protected lands have been put into place. And one type of these protected lands is a wildlife refuge, which is run by the Fish and Wildlife Service and limits human activity. So you might be able to go hiking and biking in one, but you may not be able to enter another one. And in order to maintain these refuges, documents with in-depth descriptions about conservation on the refuge are made, and these documents are called comprehensive conservation plans. And within these documents is information about species present on the refuge, habitats on the refuge, land acquisition history, and guidelines for the plan. And managers use these documents to help with knowing what actions should and can be done on the refuge. My question was, how is biodiversity represented in wildlife refuges along the eastern seaboard? And this question was mainly geared towards endangered, threatened, and species of concern. And my hypothesis was that mammals would be the most represented, and this is because a variety of game species are mammals, including bear, squirrels. So for my data collection, I did a variety of different things. I collected data on the state a refuge was in, the name of each refuge, the purpose of a refuge, the amount of acreage each refuge had, the latitude and longitude of the refuge, and taxonomic group tally. And what I mean by that is I collected data on how many plants were in the refuge, how many mammals were in the refuge, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, invertebrates such as insects, and other invertebrates such as mollusks and crayfish. And to collect this data, I used the Fish and Wildlife Service website, which is where I specifically got the data for what state a refuge was in and the refuge name, and that's where I got access to the comprehensive conservation plans. And within the comprehensive conservation plans, that's where I found the refuge purpose, the acreage, and that's where I was able to record my tally for the taxonomic groups. For my analysis methods, I did a couple of different things. I wanted to see how everything varied between state and how everything varied between taxonomic groups. So I conducted an ANOVA for each one, and I also did a Tukey AHD to see exactly where significance was occurring. In addition to that, I also ran 2 linear regressions to see if acreage had or latitude had an effect on the number of species within a refuge. And I conducted all of my analysis in RStudio. The ANOVA for taxonomic groups actually showed to be significant. I'm waiting for this slide to come up here. There it is. So it actually showed to be significant with a p-value of less than 0.001. And the Tukey AHD test revealed that birds were very significant when compared to any other taxonomic group with a p-value of less than 0.001. But all other taxonomic groups were not significant with the Tukey AHD test. And this is just another figure to show how much more birds were represented compared to all other taxonomic groups. In the states, there was no significant difference between them. All the taxonomic groups were represented about the same for each state, and so it was not significant, and there was a p-value of 0.299. And then this is just another image to show how the taxonomic groups were represented in each state. The linear regression for the acreage showed that it was not significant with a p-value of 0.12. So there was no effect of acreage with the number of taxa. And it is actually the same result for latitude. There was a p-value of 0.089, so once again, not significant. So latitude also did not have an effect on the number of species being represented within a refuge. So why birds? Data was consistent with refuge purpose, and many of the refuge purposes included information about establishing for migratory birds. So there was a Migratory Bird Act, which prohibited possession or use of birds in market in any way, and so the protection of birds was just there. And then in addition to that, birds are considered to be an umbrella species. And what I mean by that is in protecting birds, other species benefit. So this is because birds share habitat needs with other species, and there's a lot of different types of birds, so a lot of different habitat types are going to be protected. So for my conclusion, while monitoring birds is easy because there's a variety of, I think that there needs to also be an emphasis on monitoring indicator species. And this is because indicator species can indicate the quality of an ecosystem and tell conservation biologists and managers what parts of the habitat need improvement. For example, finding lichen species is great for determining the air quality in the area. And then in addition to that, I have to say that standardizing the comprehensive conservation plans is important. The lack of uniformity actually prevented some of my data collection because there was not always a clear list of species of concern or endangered or threatened species. And so I had to leave some of the refuges out, which may have had an impact on my results. And in addition, if there's more standardization, then locating certain aspects of the plans would be easier, such as finding the acreage or the refuge purpose, which was also not always consistent. And then as far as what I would do next, I would have to say that analyzing my data without birds to see if there's any significant difference between taxa and or states would be the next thing to do. And this is because birds may have caused some bias because of how much of an outlying factor they were. And I just want to give my thanks to Dr. Scott Pearson and Dr. Robert Zinna for helping me with this project, and the Fish and Wildlife Service for giving me access to the website. And if you have any questions, please email me. I know my email is probably cut off a little bit because of my face in this video, but if you go back to the beginning slide, you can find my email there as well. I say thank you for watching.